Hi, it's Dianne, and I'm very excited for my new book, Daily Meditations for Visionary Leaders. Check it out on my website, visionsapplied.com/meditation. Now, on with the show.
If you are listening to this podcast, it means you are searching for someone who understands you, someone who gets you. You are yearning to be understood and to belong. Welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast, where we help smart, talented, and sensitive people navigate an often insensitive world. Let's welcome your host, ambassador, author, speaker, and mentor, Dianne Allen. Dianne has the experience and knowledge to educate and inspire, as she has been there and understands your unique intensities and their challenges.
Hey, everybody, it's Dianne with Someone Gets Me. And this episode is packed with amazing information and inspiration for you. So you want to make sure that you turn it up and listen carefully. I have a guest today who has all kinds of amazing wisdom and life experience to share with us. Judi Snyder is a mastered certified financial transitionist. I know her to be this amazing woman with a vivacious personality and an amazing knack for helping people with their financial situations. I have seen her personally help people in ways that they could never see coming that have really worked out. So Judi is a genius at these things and is gifted in ways that she won't say about herself. So I just did. She helps people who are in transition, whether it's retirement or whether it's, you get forced and laid off, or whether you have big money coming. Maybe you're going to inherit money or something, or you win the lottery, or there's a change in what's going on, or she helps that. And that's important, right? Because transitions, we all have them. Most of us don't like them. But if we're not smart during those times and we don't have somebody in our corner during those times, it could go bad very quickly. So Judi is that expert to call in those moments. She helps you navigate through all those challenges so that you're not making poor decisions out of emotional need or fear, because she's level-headed and she's able to see past your own emotions. She's not in the forest with you. She has the ability, skills, and knowledge to help you. So Judi, welcome to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am so happy that you took some time out of your busy day to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Dianne. It is my pleasure and honor to be here with you today.
Well, great. So now we're going to just start out with some questions and we're just going to see where it goes, because that's how I like to do things.
Sure.
And I know that you're very good at helping people with transition and everything. So can you kind of define for everybody, so we're all talking about the same thing, of when you hear about transition or somebody in one, what that means to you, things maybe people should look out for, or maybe there's transitions people don't think are really transitions?
Oh, good question. And, yes. I think the best way to put it is a quote from Susan Bradley, who actually founded the Sudden Money Institute, where the certified financial transitionist education has come from. And her quote is, "When life changes, money changes. And when money changes, life changes." And I think that really pretty much sums it up. It doesn't matter if it's an influx of money or of the threat of no money. It's going to cause some kind of transition. And what can precipitate these changes could be anything from losing a spouse or a partner, losing your job where, your whole identity was wrapped up in for 20, 30 years, 40 years. Going into retirement, even something happy like winning the lottery. Some people don't realize some of the lottery winners are the most depressed and anxious people of all the people going through transition, because it's so not what they thought it would be. So when if are anticipating losing a spouse, you're going to be sad, you're going to be grieving, but you don't understand that when you win the lottery, you may be going through some of those feelings as well. What happens traditionally is, first of all, everybody's after you, and you have all these friends and relatives that come up from the past, but also people don't understand the anxiety that can come from having a sudden cash injection and not knowing what to do with it. And expecting you to make decisions that you're not equipped to make. You didn't have the mind that created the money over a long period of time, so you're not going to be able to make the decisions right away. And so, this is what happens with a lot of transitions, and people just aren't taught how to navigate through these things. I mean, we're just taught to kind of go with the flow, and when the flow is interrupted, nobody gives us any guidance, on how to do this as we're, getting our education growing up.
Right. So, I've always heard a lot that money and love are on the same vibration. And so when things change, you can tell how somebody handles their money by how they love or withhold love. And you can also see how they will love by how they handle their money. So if they're penny pinchers or they're overly generous without regard for being a good steward, then you're going to see those same behaviors in their relationships and in their love life and the way they interact with others. And so when I first learned this about, 25, 30 years ago, I've watched it over time, and I appreciate good stewardship, and then to be a steward means take the best care of. And so if you're going to be in a transition or somebody's going to have, like, whether it's an influx or a challenge coming up, then to be a good steward means to be interdependent and find the right resources and assistance. It does not mean to freak out and withdraw and pull in, or to just throw caution to the wind and say you only live once, who cares? It's that stewardship, which sounds like that's what you're talking about to me.
It is. But, I also like a lot, it's interesting because on the same vein of what you just said, I've always said that money doesn't make you different. It just makes you more of what you already are. So if you're a nice person, you're probably going to be a nicer person. If you're not a nice person, you're probably not going to be, you're probably going to be more of a jerk, but so it's going to intensify what you already are because it's really a magnifier. It's not, it's the currency of our the essence of who we are. So it's going to magnify who that person is. And, people that go through transitions and, have like, they get money, they lose money. You can tell a lot about a person on how they navigate through that. Even people that have had businesses, lost them, do they get up and go again? Do they get up and rebuild, or do they wallow, in self-pity? Now, we all do that. I think it's good to do that for a day or two, but then at some point you got to say, okay, what did I learn from this? Let's look at what this, every negative thing in my life, I try to look at what is the blessing in the messing, is my saying. There's got to be some kind of blessing in it. And you have to look at, what has this created? It's created a new opportunity, and maybe this is the path of least resistance.
So what's the blessing in the messing? That's genius. I love that. So in other words, what's the lesson I get out of the thing I just messed up?
Right.
I love how you said that, the blessing in the messing. That's hilarious.
Yeah, think about it. Our inner guidance knows everything. We don't always listen to it, but it's going to keep getting louder and louder and louder until we do. So sometimes it takes getting hit over the proverbial head before we start to take a step back and say, I got to make some changes there.
Yes, that's true. Sometimes it's the whisper roar or the 2x4, as I say.
I love that too.
Like first the universe whispers, and then that doesn't work, and then it roars, and then pretty soon we're getting clocked over the head with that 2x4. And so exactly. It's so important. So I'd like to talk about challenges people have when it comes to dealing with money and dealing with transition. And the big one that this audience always names is overthinking. Mm-hmm. And, I call it analysis paralysis a lot, because we can overthink ourselves right into a place of complete paralysis, inability to do anything or come off center. And I'm sure you run into that, and you're a very bright and talented woman, so I'll bet you overthink too. So can you tell us maybe some personal experiences, and then maybe something that you might share with somebody who's coming to you for some assistance on what they can do with that, and maybe a way to turn their overthinking into an asset, or how do you manage overthinking?
Well, you know how musicians will say, I was classically trained in opera or this. Well, I was classically trained in overthinking by corporate America. Thank you very much. And what I have noticed, and I still, by the way, still struggle with this. I'm not cured of my overthinking by any stretch of the imagination. But what I have observed in myself and my colleagues is that when you are hired to do any job, well, first let me back up and say overthinking is really about control. It's about controlling a situation. And when you're hired to perform a job, you are hired to control a situation. You get trained on controlling that situation. You get rewarded on controlling that situation. It's all about the classical overthinking or controlling a situation. And so I was in sales and marketing for nearly 30 years. And I got plaques and trips and all kinds of stuff saying, hey, you're the best salesperson in the country right now, or whatever. Really what they were saying is, you have managed to overthink better than anyone else in the sales force. And this was great, and it worked really well in business. But what I found is in life, it just doesn't work because you can't control every situation. You know, in any given job, you might have 20 or 30 things that you need to control, but in life, you don't know what life is going to throw at you. And by the way, even if you did know, you can't control it, nor should you. And what happens is you end up being if you're an overachiever like I was, and still am, you try to anticipate and you want to make sure that everything has its place and you're moving forward. And sometimes you don't stop to listen to what your inner guidance is telling you to do because you're not in the present moment. And I think that's the number one takeaway that I've learned over the years is anticipating future outcomes takes you away from the present and really eliminates you hearing your inner voice. And that inner voice is going to, like you said, either hit you with the 2x4, whisper, or hit you with the 2x4. And I prefer, it's nice to look for the blessings in the messings, but I would prefer less messings. So I have learned to meditate. Thank you very much, because you've contributed greatly to humanity with your meditation guidance. And that, even if it's for 20 minutes a day, I know that I'm quieting my mind and I'm not overthinking for those 20 minutes. And sometimes just not even listening to myself, but just not overthinking for 20 minutes is a goal, because I have so much on my mind. So I think that we need to be kind to ourselves, and we need to take time and recognize when we're in that mode, because it's hard when you've been trained for 30 years to stop it. It's probably not going to stop. But if you can recognize it, take a breath, take a step back, maybe take a walk, get in the outdoors. Sometimes when I'm in that mode, instead of going to the gym where it's kind of hustle and bustle, I'll go and walk on the causeway and just get out in nature. And now I'm still walking at a fast pace, but I'm looking at the waves. So I'm just getting in tune more with nature and myself.
So being in tune helps us with overthinking. So when you have somebody who's going through a financial transition who overthinks, and when they know that that's their way, they overthink, what are some things that you might share with them to help them so that they can help you help them? Where you're going to try to help guide them and stuff, and you know that they're just kind of frozen in overthinking. What are some ways that you can kind of help them break that cycle so that somebody like you could actually use all your skills to really get the best outcome for them instead of spending all your time beating into this overthinking wall?
Sure. Well, I think there's a couple of answers here. I think for somebody who's anticipating a transition, so maybe somebody who has a loved one that they know is going to be passing away, or they know they're going to be retiring, or they know they're going to be getting a settlement or an inheritance. A lot of people don't realize an inheritance creates it's a very different thing, getting money from an inheritance than it is from getting it from lottery, or getting it from a lawsuit, or getting it from your job. There's a lot of emotion tied to that inheritance because it's from the death of someone. So there's a lot of competing feelings going on. I'm happy about the money, I'm sad about the loss. I can't spend the money because that means, I'm happy about the loss. There's a lot of that going on. And a lot of times we'll find in our practice, people will say, you can do anything what you want with this money, but this money I cannot lose, because they're so emotionally attached to it. So the thing I would say is, if you are anticipating a transition of any kind, I think the thing to make sure is that your financial house is in order. And what I mean by that is that you really are taking responsibility for your own financial house by learning about financial products and by creating budgets. And I really don't like the word budget, but understanding your numbers. So knowing what your required income needs are and learning what your desired income needs are. So what do I absolutely need to live on, and what would I like to have to live on? Knowing those two numbers is going to help anyone design a plan for you. And then you want to start to educate yourself, and do this when you don't have the heat of the moment to make a decision. Do this over time. Take a class here, go to a class there. Understand the differences between financial advisors. There are some financial advisors that are fee only. There are some that only do the stock market. There are insurance professionals. They do safe and guaranteed products, and that's what we do. There are people that don't do any products. They just, you pay them a fee and they just do a plan. Understand the differences, because that's going to dictate what they can offer you. If you go to a Lexus dealer, he's not going to tell you how great a Mercedes is, and vice versa. So you want to be able to understand what is their area of specialty and how does it fit with your money rules. And this is something I'm really passionate about, is deciding what your money rules are. And these are things like, what are my goals with my money? What is the purpose of my money? Now, you can't know the purpose unless you know what your required and desired income is. So that's how you have to start it. But then once you learn what your money rules, or what your required and desired income is, now you have to have a set of money rules, like, how much risk do I want to take? Do I want to take any risk? Do I want guaranteed products? What is the interest rate I need to earn on my money in order to meet my goals of required income? What is the difference between simple interest and compounded interest? These are all things that I call the money rules that you can learn over time and create this list ahead of time, so that as you have money to invest, you're not forced to make a decision like on the spot when you're emotionally charged.
Well, that's a good point too, about not being emotionally charged, because I think when we're emotionally charged, then that's where the door is open to make a decision that you turn back later and look at and regret, or do something like that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking of one of the signs we have on our boats that I race. It says, proper planning prevents poor performance. And that's what I hear you saying is to plan ahead and learn ahead. And I know when I start learning some of these, and I start hearing professional like you start speaking about all these things, my brain just starts going haywire, because I'm a visionary. And when somebody tries to get me to say, well, what's this and that? My dad was a banker though, so I understand a lot of it. And there's also all of this other mental thing. And so I think that's the importance of having somebody else who does get it, who can help.
Exactly.
Like when you say about navigating the questions, because not everybody can ask an educated question because they don't know what the pool of answers even are.
You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And so it becomes daunting, and that's what causes you to become paralyzed. And not making the decision is still making a decision.
And so the daunting part where people then freeze, I think, goes right into the next thing I wanted you to kind of wrap into this overthinking part, and that's the procrastination. Is when people's brain freezes over, or they get confused, or it becomes so big that it feels overwhelming, then people can put their head in the sand and procrastinate out of fear.
Right.
So that they're not having to deal with it, but eventually you have to deal with it. Eventually that non-action, that procrastination ends up in a situation. So how do you help somebody get off that?
Well, it's funny. I find in financial matters, procrastination starts with people going into the due diligence process. So they decide, okay, I've got to take charge of my finances. They go out and they want to learn about finances, and then they get overwhelmed with a lot of the jargon and BS stuff that's out there. And then they get paralyzed and move on. And I think what the first thing you have to do is understand and be kind to yourself and realize that making money is we're doing that 250 days a year or more. Investing money, we do maybe 2 hours a year, maybe. So how are you expected to know as much about making money, investing money, as you do about making money? And the thing that's that I went through myself, and I'm not proud of this. In fact, it took me a while to even admit this to people. I was considered the finance diva in my company. Like I can get anybody. I sold MRIs and CTs. There are millions of dollars worth of equipment. I could get anybody financed. I was the finance diva. I even have a plaque that has finance diva on it. But when it came to my own personal money, I didn't know crap. I didn't know anything about my personal money. And I was embarrassed, because the more successful you are at making money, the more embarrassed and least likely you are to go get help on, figuring out what your own personal finances are. And I just left everything to my company. Oh, I'm putting the max in my 401k and I'm doing this and okay, I'm done. Well, you're not done. You've got to take charge and go out and learn this stuff on your own. And you're not going to get the training from your company. Oh, and by the way, most of us leave our companies in this task, but the government incentivized companies to take away our pensions and institute 401ks. So a pension used to be what the company provided, and they managed it, and they were in charge of making it grow, and they were in charge of making sure that you had it when you retired. The 401k, now you're in charge, you're paying the fees, and how much training did you get? Zero. You got zero training, and now all of a sudden you're expected to figure out what to do with this money and how to turn it into a paycheck when you retire. It's kind of a daunting thing, but you could take it one bite at a time. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And you didn't learn to do your job in 1 hour. You're not going to learn to manage your money in 1 hour. It's going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of self-education.
Exactly. And so then that takes initiative and desire, and at the end of the day, being accountable for the long-term picture. So often people are so caught up in the day-to-day or in the grind of it all that they think, oh, any transition I might have, they don't even think about transitions, but then they think they're so far away and then they show up and it's a surprise, even though we all go through these transitions.
Well, and Dianne, just on that point, because we didn't talk about if you're already in the transition and you didn't anticipate it, because that's very real too, right? Somebody passes away suddenly, you get laid off suddenly. What do you do then? Well, there are many transitions, as we know, but the one thing they all have in common is the number one thing that you do is not do anything. And I call it the decision-free zone. You make no decisions in that initial time period. You have to honor, as you say, honor the pause, feel it, experience the pain or whatever feelings are bubbling up over this transition, and make no decisions and not let anybody railroad you into making any decision like that. You need time to process. The next thing I tell people to do is like, okay, as you start to come out of that initial shock, I recommend people wake up every day in the morning and they just ask themselves one question: what will make me happy today? Not what will make me happy, not what will make me happy in the long term. What will make me happy today? And maybe it's just staying in your pajamas and watching Netflix. Who knows? It's what will make you happy that day. And as you do that every day, you'll start to find that you're branching out, you're getting out a little bit more, your thoughts are more collected, and you're ready to take on a little bit more responsibility. The next thing I would advise somebody to do is get some index cards and just throw up on them as far as everything that you think you need to do. Put one thing on each card. I need to do this. Well, I need to do that. I need to notify the bank. I need to do this. Whatever it is. I don't care if there's 100 of them. Just put one item on each index card and then put a rubber band around them. Go meet with hopefully you have a professional in your life that can look at this objectively, or if you can find a financial transitionist, lay out all those cards and figure out what category they go in. Do they go in now, soon, or later? And then you just throw those cards in that category, and then you check them off one by one. Because it's too overwhelming, all the things that are going through your mind, and you can't visually process what you have to do when. And so I think, to me, I found that that's one way you just can throw up on these cards and, write everything down, and then somebody else is there to help guide you along on what absolutely needs to be done right away and what can wait.
And that's an important point, is to have other people who aren't in it with you helping support the process. So by writing one thing per card, it makes it easier for a professional person to help you sort the time frames or what's really most important. It's not like 4 things are on the card and 2 are important and one's not important. And what do we do? Rip the card, or how does that work? So one thing per card is very essential, I think. And I also think having a professional person in your life that is not emotionally connected into what's going on. So even if the financial person is your brother and it's a big mess, or your parent or your cousin, they're still emotionally involved. Have somebody who has the space and distance so that they can help you with using their rational mind and their calming way to be able to say, okay, let's come up with a plan.
Exactly. And they don't have a vested interest. They don't have a vested interest in any of the things that you have to do, but they have the knowledge of what you have to do. So if you had to say, make a decision on carrying insurance for a car, say for a deceased partner, they know, okay, we need to do this like by this date and whatever, but you don't want somebody who wants that car to be that person sitting across from you who's saying, you need to do this right now, because you may not need to do it right now. So it's a delicate balance, and you may even want to do this with a couple of people, or a couple of people together or a couple of people independently. But I think the important thing is you're sitting down and you're just kind of, and I'll do this with our clients, like I'll be the person writing these things down on the cards. They just kind of are free floating, thoughts as they come to them. And then we organize them, and it's much more of a relief to say, okay, right now I only need to do 2 things. I don't need to do, there's 50 cards here, but I only need to do 2 right now. So it kind of gives you a reprieve, and I have some time, and possibly the other person can help with building your team that can help you achieve some of the things that you have to get done.
That's perfect. Awesome. So how do you soothe yourself when you're stressed out? What do you do to handle your personal stress?
I do a couple of different things. I think working out has been really helpful to me. Over the last year and a half, my husband and I decided to take health into our hands very seriously. And we started a healthy way of eating, and we implemented exercise every day. And I have not missed a day, I will tell you, in 18 months. I do something. I might not work out at the gym, but I'll walk an hour somewhere. You can always walk. And so I will walk somewhere, and depending on how I feel, if I'm self-soothing, I will walk outdoors. I will try to be in nature because it makes me feel better. I definitely recommend getting into a meditation practice. I think that is key. I'm not always really good at taking my own advice. Sometimes I can't quiet my own mind, but I do try. And I think it's about a process. You don't always have to be successful every day, but if you get into that process, eventually you'll be successful. And I think classic overthinkers probably have tried meditation. Like I used to say, I tried it, I can't do it. My mind goes everywhere. It does, and that's going to happen. But the more you do it, the more it will work. It's like anything. You don't expect to be down 5 sizes when you start working out. It's a process that takes a year or 2, but it's going to come. Well, it's the same with meditation. You may not be able to quiet your mind initially, but eventually you get into those same practices, it will happen.
And so it's important to have time that's protected and dedicated, where, like you said, for this period of time every day, you're doing something. And
right.
Maybe the gym, but even when you're on a cruise or when you're traveling, that you and your husband are still being active somehow, some way during the course of that day.
Absolutely. And, we're two different people. Like, Jeff, and he's very analytical and very regimented and very, he's very routine. He likes a routine. I'm not. Remember, I was the salesperson in corporate America. I didn't have an office. I was on the road. So I'm not a regimented person. So I don't work out and meditate the same time every day. Sometimes I don't get to it until midnight, but it happens. It happens for both of us. And I honor when he is meditating. I make sure I'm out doing something so I don't interrupt him. And he the same with me. So it's really about creating that time that's good for you. If you're not a person who can meditate in the morning, then don't. Like everybody tells you, get up and meditate. I can't do that. Are you kidding? I got to have my coffee. There's no way I'm meditating first thing in the morning. That is just not happening. So you've got to do what's right for yourself.
So it's so important to honor your unique talents and your own unique gifts, right? Because not everybody does it the same, but our brains want us to think that everybody does it the same when really nobody's doing it the same.
Exactly.
And so by honoring that, we get to have more fun with it. I mean, I have a pretty consistent meditation practice, and now with my meditation podcast, and there are days it's completely different than what I think it's going to be. And like today, I was supposed to do my meditation usually in the middle of the day. Didn't happen because I was too busy writing this really cool book. I was telling you I'm going to do this little booklet that we were talking about before the show, and I was in a groove and I wasn't going to stop. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to meditate. It just means I moved it a little bit because this vision I had in this creative moment, isn't going to come again. And so I understand that creative flow with myself. So it's not about beating myself up. It's about, okay, well, I'll just move it later. I have plenty of blocks of time. We'll just move it over here.
Exactly. One tip I do want to give you is one thing that I do all different kinds of meditations. Some I do guided. Some I don't know if you've ever heard of Holosync, the binaural beats.
Yes.
Sometimes I do binaural beats. Sometimes just music. When I'm in classic overthinking mode, where my mind is racing about something I can't get my mind off of, I find that the guided meditations work best because then I could focus on what somebody else is saying rather than the music or the soothing music that all that does is create a happy place for my thoughts to start taking over. So sometimes I think guided meditation can help with overthinking.
Yes, that's one of the reasons why my meditation podcast is all guided. Because I think that if we give our minds something to focus on, the rest of us can get the break.
Exactly.
And I think it pays off greatly. And so you're in my book, Daily Meditations for Visionary Leaders. You were quoted in the book because you are a visionary leader and you're a great thinker of these days. And the reason why I put current people like you alive and well right now in the book is to remind all of us, and especially all my readers and listeners, that great thinkers are still alive. They didn't die with Socrates and Plato, back then. That visionary and that skill and ability to really think and create good for the world is still alive. So I want to thank you for being in the book. And so if you want to see what Judi had to say in the book, you have to get the book. And her quote was amazing. And what I think is really neat is that she is the visionary, overthinker, fun, happy person who has a skill set that is very fine-tuned and very unique for a visionary. So I think that's really neat. But thank you for being in the book.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dianne.
That's really cool. So now I have another couple questions. We're almost done, but I always love to ask some personal questions so that we all realize that we're all people just trying to make it. We're walking each other home, as Ram Dass says. We're all in this together. And so I asked you about how you soothe yourself, and I heard about nature, and of course that's really important. And so I'm interested what your favorite food is. Like if we were going to go out to a restaurant, what's your favorite kind of food?
Oh my gosh, I've got two.
Okay, you can do two.
Pizza and pasta.
Nice.
Wait, maybe three. Pizza, pasta, and I am powerless over Mexican queso dip and tortilla chips.
Wow. All right. So now we all know where to take Judi.
But here's the rub. I'm keto. I do keto. I follow a ketogenic diet, so I haven't been eating pizza, pasta, or tortilla chips.
So now that you're on your ketogenic diet, what is your favorite food? What do you enjoy the
Probably,
most?
I still do love my cheese, but I eat a lot of nuts.
Nuts.
A lot
Yeah.
of pistachios.
Nice. Okay. I know you travel a lot. Where is the favorite place that you've been that you traveled, and what did you love about it?
Oh my gosh. That's like asking somebody for their favorite child. I don't know. All right, I have two. I have a local place. My happy place is Honeymoon Island, which is here in the Clearwater, Dunedin area. I just love it. My husband and I got married there. We just, it's a place where I sometimes go to self-soothe. I'll just go. That's where, in fact, every Sunday we go and we meditate and walk the causeway. That is my local place. I love the beach anywhere, but as far as like a country that I really loved, I loved Italy, because I just envied the way Italians know how to live and enjoy every minute of life. So they live for the day. They live to have a glass of wine and a bowl of pasta, and we'll get to it when we get to it. And I guess I've always envied that, because I've never had that. I've always been like the classic firstborn overachiever. I got to get this done, faster, whatever. And so it's kind of what I aspire to be, I guess. So, and of course, everything is magical in Italy. Every place I went, I was like, oh, this is my favorite area. No, Venice is. No, Rome is. No, Pompeii is so amazing. Like every place I went, it was my favorite. So I just say Italy now.
That's genius. Place to place. No, this is my favorite one. This is my favorite one. Somehow I can see you doing that perfectly. So is there anything that I didn't ask you about or didn't bring up, or something that you really feel led that you would like to share with all the wonderful people listening to us?
Oh, well, nothing you didn't ask me, but I recently saw a quote. It was a meme on Facebook, of all places, that I really love, and I try to live this every day, especially when I get very stressed out. And it goes something like, if it won't matter in 5 years, don't devote more than 5 minutes to it, or something like that. It's amazing how much that has had me. When I was talking before about taking a step back and pausing, that's what I say to myself. Will this matter in 5 years? No, it won't. Okay, let me just do what I have to do to get through this now.
Exactly. That's one of the classic questions I teach everybody. If it's not going to matter, I usually use 2 or 5 years. If it's not going to matter in a couple of years, then what am I doing? Putting all the energy into it.
But you know what? We don't do that for some reason. We know it's so simple, but not easy, if you know what I mean. It's simple, but not easy.
Well, because we live in a culture that doesn't support that. So the few of us who do it are mavericks, I guess. So I want to thank you for being on the show and spending time with us, sharing all of your great enthusiasm and wisdom and ideas and energy. And it's been a true pleasure and honor having you here. So thank you very much, Judi.
Oh, thank you, Dianne. It's an honor being part of your community.
Thank you. So everybody listen up. Remember, if you keep your face to the sun, the shadows fall behind you. This is your day, and live it well. And so until the next episode, keep a smile on your face and remember, you're the best idea God ever had.
Are you tired of searching for someone who understands you? Join our Facebook group, Someone Gets Me. In this group, you will be able to connect with others who are intense, sensitive, smart, talented, and wanting to be understood. Dianne shares her insights and teachings, and you can connect with others. Join today.